My name is Keith Dussel. I work for the Mohr Career Services, and I'm excited to be having a conversation today with Ian LeClair. Just some housekeeping items to get started. I have my colleague Amy on the call today, and this is the second of our summer webinar series. Mohr Career Services is here to support you for those business students on the call. We are here virtually. We are ready to help. We have available video conferencing, phone services. You can schedule an appointment. There's quite a bit of service available to you for your career this summer. Those are available at business.uoregon.edu/career. If you're a non-business student, there are great resources available also for you at the University Career Center as well. So if you have any technical issues or questions during the presentation today, please feel free to go ahead and go into chat. And the same is true if you have questions for our speaker. You can go into the chat and you can go ahead and post those, and we will ask them as we have our time with Ian. So I'm joined today by U of O alum, Ian LeClair, strategic proposal consultant at Aetna and CVS Health Company. We're excited to hear about his perspective and some thoughts on the industry. Ian's going to go ahead and introduce himself, and then we'll go ahead and dive into some questions. So with that, Ian, take it away.
Hello, everyone. Like Keith said, my name is Ian LeClair. I'm working currently at the Aetna CVS location in Hartford, Connecticut, as a strategic proposal consultant for public and labor sales support. We basically handle large requests for proposal from basically customers and brokers for health insurance, via dental, medical, vision, also large Medicare Advantage with Part D programs. Before this, I was going to the University of Oregon, getting my MBA in the Center for Sustainable Business Practices, and also getting the strategic leadership title as well, I suppose. Before that, I was in the U.S. Air Force as an intelligence analyst, where I was actually doing very similar things to what I'm doing now in my current position. And I was working on large project proposals for both the DoD customers and the Air Force at large. And interestingly enough, in my undergrad, I got a bachelor's degree in marine science. So that's kind of me in a nutshell in terms of my career path as it is today.
Awesome. You've done quite a bit, and I think starting off, I'll say thank you for your service with your time with the Air Force. Tell us a little bit about what your decision-making process was when you were moving from sort of thing to thing, because obviously marine biology leads to Aetna and healthcare. So maybe give us a little bit of a background on what it was that led you to your different decisions in that process.
Sure. I've always been very open and flexible when it comes to sort of my life path. I've always wanted to have somewhat of a plan, but when it came to career, definitely much more open. And when I graduated from UConn with my bachelor's in marine science in 2010, that was actually when we were still experiencing the last recession that we're in. And so basically most of the jobs that you'd normally get are either with the state or funded by government. And there really wasn't anything going on. I had some friends that had actually received jobs with the state, and about 2 weeks before they were supposed to start, those jobs actually just disappeared. So you definitely have to be aware of, what your pathways are to some degree. At that time, my now wife and I both made the decision to pursue something that I didn't think I was actually going to do, That was to follow my father's footsteps and join the Air Force. I found it was a really good point in my life there where, obviously, using my bachelor's degree wasn't super clear in the near future, and being able to serve my country was something that was really important to me. So I took it upon myself to go that route. And while in the military, as I said, started as an intelligence analyst, basically doing briefings for, I guess as you'd call it, the CEO of the different departments of the Air Force. So a lot of high-level discussions, strategy was involved. I did a lot of project management when it came to that as well. We'd receive requests from specific DoD, so Department of Defense, customers of ours that were looking for, what's the capabilities of this specific weapons platform that a enemy combatant has, and it was our job to basically go and find that information and present it in a way that made sense to a layperson. One of the things I found super useful in the military was their professional development and sort of coaching method, and I really appreciated the matrix structure that we're in the military, because not only did we have sort of our Air Force goals, but there was also a kind of third-party component to it, and that was the intelligence community. And so we had two bosses at the same time, which in the business field you'll find happens a lot of time, because you're doing what you need to do for your specific department, but then your organization is also looking for you to do other things. And whether that's working on projects that are kind of cross-pollinating between the different departments, or then your own projects within your specific department, can be pretty important. And through that work, I found going forward and in continuing my education, the thing I really wanted to pursue was something in more of a management field, because I really appreciated the mentoring aspect of my position as I was reaching more senior levels in the military. And I specifically looked at the University of Oregon because in my bachelor's degree, I did a lot of climate science and environmental study. And a lot of it was actually policy driven. And I really liked the fact that the University of Oregon in their MBA program had a green MBA, and at the time was actually the #1 in the country. So it made my decision pretty easy when it came to choosing the next step in my career path. And really, from a sustainability perspective, personally, I feel that the best way to make change is from within a large company, because they are having such a great impact upon the environment, and they have so much of an impact that they can play in terms of getting other like companies to make changes as well, because it's one of those things where if a large company is doing something, a lot of other companies that want to succeed as well will emulate them. And so that's kind of what led me to Aetna. Obviously, a big thing in getting the job there was kind of my networking approach and finding a champion within the company that was actually willing to, put me in as a referral. And after the interview process, it's gone pretty well so far.
Knowing people inside is so key. We had an interesting question that came through on the chat from Diana about sort of continuous improvement seems to be a real theme for you, both in your career and in your work. Can you speak a little bit about, what that process looks like, and specifically maybe speak to how do you use data to make decisions? How do you, what are your processes to improve, and how do you use the information you have to make those things work?
So I think what's really key is, even if you don't have an exact idea of where you see yourself in 5 to 10 years, it might be important to kind of try to target a couple different jobs that you feel might be something that you're interested in the future, and find people on LinkedIn or, just Google it, but see what kind of certifications and training that they list in their resume, because, that's going to be kind of the thing that is going to be useful for you to basically take upon yourself, so that when you come to the point where, you want to apply for this job that's just popped up, you're not scrambling to take a specific certification that you need for that position. So one of the things for me is, in my position right now, we do a lot of Lean Six Sigma work. So that's like the yellow, green, black belt process. And so our company is really big on process improvement and change management. And so even before I interviewed for the position at Aetna, I had found a pretty inexpensive yellow belt course that you can take online. And yellow belt's like the second in the lineup. White is pretty simple, and most companies will actually give you that one for free. I think it costs a couple $100, but basically investing in yourself and getting additional skills that will make you, either stand up when you look at going into a company, or will help you in your actual position, are really important. And so, right now in my current position, right when I got into my current job, as soon as I finished the training period, I was very hungry for finding projects that I could do that were, outside my day-to-day duties. So, several of those were joining work groups that were looking into specific processes. And I found it really interesting because I thought, maybe I just started at this position, what do I know? But sometimes that outside perspective, and having, if you're just finishing up your bachelor's degree or MBA, having that recent experience and learning kind of the new things that teachers are bringing to the table, you might have something to contribute that, others in your group wouldn't think of. And again, it's part of the process. You're trying to develop yourself, and the goal is to get yourself into a higher position as quickly as possible. I really am an adamant believer in take as much responsibility as they're willing to give you, and kind of the benefits or rewards will kind of just come on their own after that.
So that is a theme that you and I have talked about in advance of this, is the idea that there are a lot of opportunities to be had in the company, and there are opportunities to move up and really kind of find your space. Kind of a two-part question. One of the quotes that I saw on Aetna's website was the idea of turning health ambitions into big and small achievements. And I thought that was kind of an interesting idea in terms of, as a future employee, coming in with those, ambitious ideas and really making differences. I've heard the phrase capital L or small L for leader, that we're all leaders in different moments, and that sometimes we're the capital L because we're leading the big effort, or sometimes we're the small L because we're leading a smaller piece of it. So that kind of leads into a question from Braden that I like here. What sort of unique challenges do you have in the operation at a company like Aetna or CVS? And, how do you adapt to sort of handle those challenges, those kinds of ambitious goals,
That's a great question. I think one of the big things for me, coming from a non-healthcare industry role before, is the fact that when I arrived there, I really didn't have much of an idea of what the healthcare industry looked like. I had done some research, but being in the role for over a year now, my knowledge is, vastly greater than when I started. And part of it is obviously the fact that, you are looking at a position that you feel that you currently don't have the knowledge for it, but it's one of those things where with training and the resources that your company gives you, as long as you're willing to do the work and kind of go down those rabbit holes, you can definitely gain the knowledge and experience that you need to succeed in your role. I think the other most challenging part of this position is they are very big on work-life balance. So I only have to work 40 hours a week if I want to, and they definitely allow us to do overtime if we need it. And there's definitely been times, this business has seasonality like many. So, come January, February, when people are starting to look for health insurance for either the mid-year or the beginning of the next year already, I'll maybe working like 10, 11 cases all at the same time. And I'm just rushing back and forth. And it's interesting because it's definitely important to find a job where you can do that and still have the ability to re-energize. And it's definitely been awesome at this company, having the avenues and sort of relief where you can do that.
Just so that's you make a great point that there's times that you have more to do, there's times you have less to do, and you kind of have that ebb and flow, the cycle of work. Can you speak a little bit, Jaden asks, can you speak a little bit to what is it on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, that you're doing as far as like analytical work? Is it project work? Is it a combination of all the things on one day? Do you try to parse out your work a little bit? Like what makes you effective in program and project management? What sort of feeds your fire a little bit?
So there's definitely times where you're kind of just holding on to the reins, trying to stay on that horse. Yeah, basically what'll end up happening, the whole process in when we receive these requests for proposal, the request will come in. I'll have about 24 hours to read a giant packet of, plan designs and benefit reviews. There'll be a giant packet of questions that the broker or the customer are asking with regard to specific programs that we're running or the various benefits that we offer for specific members in the group. And so my job is then to, within the next 2 days, schedule a strategy call with all the stakeholders that are involved on our side of the proposal, create a project plan, basically assigning duties to the various members of that team that's going to put together a proposal, farming out requests for different plan designs. If a company is asking for geo access requests where we list how many, basically geo access is a document that lists out based off of the zip codes for a specific group that are listed, how many of those individuals within that group have access to a doctor within a certain amount of miles. And that goes down to specialists as well. And really the customer is looking to see, if we move to your company, are our customers going to get disrupted? Will they still have access to their same doctor? Along with that, there's a bunch of other technical documents that we farm out to various groups. So that's probably the first 3 days. And I'd say once you're actually good at doing that, you can probably get everything done in like a 10-hour period. And then there's this very big dead spot in the middle where nothing's happening until you receive all those documents back and you're basically binding up this case together and sending it out. So you might have like a week in between where there's nothing happening. But then you have to remember that you'll also get assigned new cases almost daily. So you have to do the same process kind of sandwiched together with that. Our bosses are definitely really good at determining who has the bandwidth or capacity to take on additional cases. And they're actually kind of sectioned out based off of complexity as well. So, they're not going to give you two huge cases back to back. They're going to try to space it out and give someone else that case. So that's during the busy season where you just kind of, go, go, go. I'd come into work, possibly not even think about having a lunch just because I'm so busy or I have so many calls going on at the same time. Not a ton of time for project work during those busy seasons. During the slow season, kind of end of July to I'd say October, that's when a lot of the project work happens. So it's really important that, once that does happen, you get on the ball and kind of transition to a different role, as it were, because you're going from project management to process improvement. In that case, there might be some project management involved in it if you are one of the leaders of a work group, for example. But it can vary quite a bit. A lot of times, if I find downtime, I'm kind of looking at the different documents, seeing if I can improve them in any way. A big thing for me is obviously process improvement. So, looking at ways to update our Excel documents. A lot of that has to do with kind of the macros that are behind the Excel documents and trying to build out, very basic code. You can even do like Google searches and kind of copy and paste snippets of code that'll work for your specific project or document that you're trying to work on. But looking at ways to improve whatever processes exist. And I think a big part of working at a corporation like Aetna or CVS is the fact that you have some people that have been working in their role or maybe have moved up a couple roles for their entire life because they enjoy kind of the work-life balance that affords them. They're not looking to, move, mountains when it comes to their career, and so they have a specific way of doing things, and there's not a lot of change that they want to really accept, and so that's where the process improvement and change management comes into play. Basically, finding ways that you can get those people on board with what you're trying to accomplish to actually make those improvements.
So I think that transitions into a question from Cole really well, which is when you're doing that work and when you're figuring out that flow and you're sort of working your way through your professional hats that you wear, what would you say is stuff that you're learning on the fly, and what would you say is formal education? Like, do you feel like as a new employee at the company, you get a lot of kind of here's how we do it, or is it more the sort of ability to sort of craft that yourself?
So it's definitely communication with your proposal director. So they're kind of in charge of the overall process, but my role is the project manager part of it. They're just making sure that they have the ultimate responsibility if something went wrong, per se. But when you start out in my role specifically, there's a pretty decent training process that's been formalized now, and you actually start with a cohort as well. So you're with those same people every time, and you're learning the different aspects to the job. And then at the end of the training process, you go through a mock case, sort of that shows you all the different parts that you're going to do. The interesting thing about this position is the fact that I've taken on cases this year that I am doing completely different things than when I started. So every case is a little bit different, and the people that are on the case make the case different as well. So you're constantly learning new things, and a lot of that is relying on either your mentor or that proposal director. I work hand in hand with that person a lot of times, and if there's something that I don't know, I think it's extremely important to one, look through the database and resources that they've provided for you. But then if you can't find it yourself, they're going to be there to not necessarily hold your hand, but make sure that you're not falling through the net.
So it's interesting. The the questions are really flowing in here. One of the things that both Tita and Thomas both asked were about how your sort of training and the skills that you learned in your undergrad and your master's help you in your day-to-day work. So like you do a lot of collaboration, you're working with customers above you, customers below you, you know, lots of different folks that you're sort of working with. What did you find in your time at the University of Oregon or broadly in your education that have been the best skills, the things that have really driven you to success?
I've always been interested in computer science, kind of as a hobby. I don't have any certifications or any deep knowledge, I would say, in terms of coding or macros or things of that nature. But kind of through both undergrad when I was doing MATLAB work, which is kind of big analytics platform because Excel really isn't great at handling really large data sets. So in the science world, we tend to use MATLAB. In the business world, we tend to use either SAS or now Tableau or Microsoft Power BI. And really just kind of dipping my foot into those things, especially in the MBA program where I was taking the data analytics, the SAS course, and also the database management course has helped out tremendously. Just kind of getting a slight background of that gives you the ability to Google for things and understand kind of what you're looking at so that you can put something together. So, one of the little things that I built out was a Excel spreadsheet that we have an assignment sheet that lists all the participants that will be taking part in that proposal. And a lot of times there's going to be a ton of blank cells due to the fact that, for each case, we might only be quoting medical or it'll be medical, dental, vision, but then there are other parts that are being left out. And you get this giant sheet and it'd be a pain to have to actually look through it. So I created a very simple macro that when you hit a button, it looks at all the cells in the second column. And if they're blank, it'll delete the rows that they fall into. So something very simple. It took me maybe 10 minutes to find on Google how to be able to do that. But having the background in my MBA program, and I'm pretty sure that database management course is actually offered to undergraduates and graduates. Same thing with the SAS course. I would highly recommend taking some kind of data course on top because even if your job doesn't require it, just having those skills might come in handy. And again, just being able to do that is another selling point, when your promotion comes around or your mid-year review.
And speaking of those kind of Excel skills, one of the questions that came in from Cole, can you speak a little bit about like some of your favorite sort of Excel and sort of data management sort of resources out on the web, or if there was a particular book that you love, or I mean, is there some place that you kind of have gone consistently to find that information? You said maybe videos, like some basic trainings.
I think, Reddit is pretty great for a lot of that kind of stuff. I think there's also Quora, but there are dedicated websites that house this kind of back and forth of how do I make it so that these cells disappear when I hit a button kind of thing. And actually just I found that Googling works the best because sometimes if you're too specific and you're in a site, you might get a part of the answer. It might be too detailed for what you're looking for, or it might not work for your specific purposes. But really using Boolean logic to your advantage basically is the best way to really go about it.
So I'm gonna pivot just a little bit here. CVS and Aetna are both companies that during this moment in history are actually they're hiring, they're bringing in new employees, especially, you know, CVS for months has been one of the top employers in the country for looking at new roles and bringing folks in. Can you give the folks that are listening to this a little bit of perspective about what it is they need to bring to an interview? What is it that makes you stand out? Speak a little bit to just, you know, what the process is to kind of get in, and what you ought to know before you send along that resume or bug you on LinkedIn.
Definitely. I think probably one of the bigger items is attention to detail. Especially in my job, it's super important because a broker or a customer is not going to tell us every little thing that they're looking for. So it's really important that we're not missing anything when we're, you know, reading through the proposal request. It's important that when we send out our proposals, there's nothing, you know, inaccurate in it, because obviously our proposal is kind of our contract to some degree. So if there's something like a financial problem that's glaring, then it's obviously going to be an issue. When interviewing, I think it's really important to talk to sort of communication skills. So something that's really important for me that, you know, I took from being in the military, and, you know, even before I was doing my undergrad, just working in retail or the service industry, is being able to, you know, have a conversation with someone. I think for me personally, I prefer going to visit someone at their desk and talk to them rather than sending an email. There's a lot of things that we lose in emails, especially in terms of tone and, you know, kind of building that relationship. And I think, you know, through my military career and also, you know, in Aetna now, building those relationships is extremely important. And that's, you know, in your organization and outside, because, you know, if you've screwed up, site, and you need to get a document that usually takes 5 days in 3 days, having that relationship with a person that can do that for you makes all the difference, where they're like, oh, no problem, I'll get that for you. So being able to speak to that in your past or your experience, you know, for me personally, when I was in the Air Force, I daily went down to talk to my customers to see, you know, what was going on. And one great thing that actually came from the University of Oregon's MBA program, I was in the leadership course, and one of the objectives in that course is to actually interview a former mentee and a former mentor. And one of the things I learned from my mentee was the fact that when I left, the person that took over my role had a lot of issues with that communication. There was a breakdown. And just knowing how important that is, because there was issues, you know, just drove home to me even more how important it was.
I've seen in some reports about work, there have been a lot of quotes about how a lot of the technical skills eventually get automated. And so one of the things that happens is that as you work your way through your business life, if you have strong skills, like you say, in communication, or strong skills in networking and those types of things, that those skills tend to be evergreen when your job skills in some cases can get automated or changed around. So I think that's a super valuable point, that your ability to communicate, your ability to network, your ability to work with others and to get things done. Again, it's always phrased as a soft skill, but it's such a powerful sort of piece. Can you speak a little bit about like your networking that you did to get into your current job, and then also the kind of networking that you do today, like, you know, on a regular basis?
Yeah, in terms of the current job, obviously, well, not everyone here knows, but I'm originally from Connecticut, so one of the goals, especially I have a 1-year-old now, and she was coming right before we decided to make the move back to Connecticut from Oregon. And so looking through the various companies that were around, I looked at job postings and seen that Aetna CVS had a really good work-life balance, which was very important to me. It was located in a good location for where we wanted to live and how close all of our relatives were. And I think a big component that maybe not everyone thinks about when they're looking for jobs is cost of living, because if you get that dream job, but you can't afford to actually live anywhere near the place, and you're spending 2 hours a day commuting. I mean, for me personally, I don't know if that's worth it, but you have to make that calculus for yourself. And really, the networking part of it was finding former alumni from UConn, because UConn's really close to Hartford and Aetna as well. So looking at my kind of old Rolodex via LinkedIn and seeing, who of my friends worked in the area, basically striking up a conversation like, hey, we're looking to move back to Connecticut. I've heard good things about Aetna. Can you tell me a little more? And so, we had a little interview, informal interview, of course, that came out of that. And, she thought that based off of, my current experience and what I'd gone through the past, that I'd actually be a really good fit for my current role. And that's how that referral process ended up going.
So we're getting down to kind of the close of the session. I have one question that came in from Thomas, and then I'm going to ask sort of a final question. The one from Thomas, he was asking about, during your time with Verizon, did your company use the 80-20 rule in terms of customer issues? And, broadly, do you use the sort of 80-20 rule in your work today in terms of identifying like issues with the largest and, impact and that type of thing?
Is that Verizon Wireless?
Yeah.
Oh, so that was a franchise location.
Mm-hmm.
So that was like retail. I wouldn't classify it on like the same level as what I'm doing right now. I mean, I definitely would ascribe to the 80-20 rule. I think that what I'm currently doing is very much in line with that line of thinking. And I'm definitely given the opportunity to kind of, forge my own way. One of the big things that actually I started doing right before COVID-19 came about in the United States was we were trying to figure out a way to bring people together more as a community in our department specifically. And through that work group, I started researching what tools were available to us. And I'd actually seen Microsoft Teams was one of the tools that we just had received as part of an Office 365 update. And after spending, 5-10 minutes with the program and seeing what the capabilities were, I realized it might be a good use for basically bringing all the colleagues together in one location. And from that initial recommendation in that work group, I ended up leading a project team that built out a workflow for all the team to use, and we're actually using it on our request for proposal process as well now. So it went from being, the small idea to, pretty much department-wide that we're using it. And especially now with the current situation that we're in, it's just become that much more useful. So I think, 80-20 rule is absolutely vital for employees to have that time to, it might not look that cut and dry in terms of 80-20, but I think over a year's period, it probably looks like that.
So it strikes me that, there's a lot of pivots that are happening right now, across America, in industry, in companies, at universities. I guess I'd love to sort of hear a little bit about what your kind of final thoughts are in terms of, what should students be doing right now to try to prepare for the next steps that they're taking? You know, what should their decision process be? What's the most valuable thing in your mind for students looking at next steps? And if they're looking at a company like Aetna or CVS, how can they make it work?
So when I was looking for a job, we obviously COVID-19 wasn't an issue, and the state of affairs was, much lighter looking, and it took a lot of interviews before I landed the position that I wanted. And so, really, networking has to be the number one thing at this point, because if it wasn't hard before to get into a job, it certainly is that much more now. And really, probably in some companies, without a referral, you might not even be looked at. So that's probably the number one thing. Outside of that, really trying to go for something that you're passionate about is also important, because if you're not going to be happy at the job, even if it is hard at this time to find something, you're not doing yourself any favors long term, I would suppose.
Well, I certainly appreciate, and I know that our students and staff appreciate the perspective. And again, great information. You don't have any issue if any of these students reach out to you and network on LinkedIn? Is that a acceptable for you?
Definitely.
Perfect. And really appreciate your time today. Great information that was shared. We will be putting this into our archives, and we'll allow students to watch it as time goes on. Fantastic opportunity to learn a bit more about the company and about your experience. Also, a reminder that we have more webinars coming this summer. You can go on Handshake and actually find the next one, which is with the Portland Trail Blazers. So make sure you check out the Handshake for the next available events. And I'll leave you with a gigantic thanks, Ian, for your time. And I appreciate the folks who've joined us today for the call. And I hope everybody has a terrific day. Thanks.
Thank you, everyone.